Hi, everyone. Welcome to our session, Constructive Criticism, because morale doesn't improve with beatings. This training is brought to you by Commercial Electronics. If you'd like to learn more about our recording solution, third-party quality assurance services, or Live 911, visit comelectronics.com. This webinar is part of our public safety education series, and you can view our upcoming webinars on our training page at comelectronics.com/training. I want to point out a couple of things before we begin. Many of the webinar functions are the same as those that you may be used to from other programs, such as asking questions, taking polls, or seeing any polls that are launched, and chatting by clicking on the icons on the left of your screen. If there are any handouts associated with the webinar, you'll be able to access those by clicking on the Handouts button. Now, you're automatically muted to eliminate background noise. However, if you'd like to ask a question, you can click on the microphone to raise your hand and request to be unmuted. One feature that I want to point out is the Notes button. You can take notes during the webinar, and those notes will be emailed to you automatically at the conclusion of the session. Keep in mind that you will be the only one who will be able to see your notes. Now, you can submit questions at any time by typing your questions into the Q&A pane or the chat pane of the control panel, and I'll address them during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. At the end of the session, you're going to have an opportunity to rate the session and give any comments. Once you leave today's webinar, you'll receive a follow-up email within 48 hours with a link to view a recording of today's webinar. My name is Beth English, and I'm the QA Program Manager for Commercial Electronics. I started my career in public safety communications 33 years ago at the ripe old age of 9. I've got my master's telecommunicator certification from the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement. I'm a TCOL instructor and a past Texas NENA president. On the personal side, my husband and I spend our leisure time RVing with 2 dogs, 4 cats, and a hedgehog. I had a friend who had numerous issues with her mother. My friend had been on the heavy side her whole life, from childhood on. Her mother mentioned it to her constantly as a child and as a teenager, putting her through numerous diet programs at a young age, including pills and severely limiting her calorie intake. As she got older, others made fun of her for being heavy, so needless to say, she had lifelong issues with her weight. It didn't matter to her that she was very attractive or that she had a wonderful personality. All she could see was her weight. The thing is, these childhood criticisms affect us for life, and they will affect the way that we handle criticism from others. After today's lesson, you will be able to define criticism, list the reasons that people criticize, state the goal of criticism being delivered, list steps to providing effective criticism, and state the principles of G.R.I.P.E. Now, before we go on, just to get an idea of what we've got in today's audience, I want to take a poll. I want to find out how many of you are a supervisor. Okay, so most of us are supervisors, some of us not, but if you're not a supervisor, you may be a trainer, you may eventually be a trainer or eventually be a supervisor. So even though you're not a supervisor at the moment, all of this will pertain to you also. Okay, so first off, let's talk about criticism and what criticism is. The word criticism was derived from a Greek word meaning a judge of literature. It evolved into meaning the art, skill, or profession of making discriminating judgments and evaluations, especially of literary or other artistic works. And this was from about 200 BC to about 400 AD. Now, move forward hundreds of years, and it's currently associated with judgments about something that is wrong or opinions that point out faults. So, why do people criticize? Well, it's their job. If you're a supervisor, a coach, a boss, or a parent, that's your job. People think that they are genuinely helping you by giving you the benefit of their wisdom or experience. Sometimes they may not have wisdom or experience, but they're going to give you the benefit of it anyway. They may lack social skills, and they're delivering a well-meant feedback unskillfully. They may be threatened by you, whether that's by your competence, your attractiveness, or something else. And criticism is their way of leveling the playing field. Okay, they're having a bad day or they're in a bad mood. We all tend to take those days out on others. They feel insecure and are overcompensating for it. By running others down, it makes them feel better about themselves. I used to have a supervisor who did this, quote unquote, jokingly, to the point that I would let it ruin my day because it started the minute we went to work and it just continued all day long. It took a while, but I finally learned to bite back, and she would stop. Well, for that day anyway. They have strong opinions about a subject. Usually you'll see this in religion and politics, and they may see other points of view as less valid. You'll see this daily on Facebook. So, who criticizes? Everyone criticizes. A better question would be, who doesn't criticize? Criticizing has practically become a national pastime, whether the person doing the criticizing knows what they're talking about or not. So let me do another poll before we go on. Does criticism bother you? Okay. So it bothers a lot of us. I envy the people that it doesn't bother. Okay. All right. So let's talk about why criticism bothers us. Now, whether you're a highly sensitive person or not, criticism bothers most of us. But why is that? Well, when we're criticized, it affects our emotional brain, where our past emotional triggers are stored. And it brings up all the painful comments that have been made to us in the past and the shame that came with them. Now, not everyone processes criticism the same way. Some of you may process it through your thinking brain, which evaluates the criticism and then applies it to the situation at hand, which allows you to use it to grow. It also attacks our self-esteem, and it feeds our own limiting beliefs, impacting the way we view ourselves. Basically, what it does is it reinforces those thoughts that we have that we aren't good enough or we're not doing a good job. It may be unfair. If you've ever been told by someone that you always or never do something, this feels incredibly unfair. My husband frequently tells me that I failed to mention something to him. No matter how many times we go over this, he believes that I never tell him what's going on. And that's what he tells me. You never tell me anything. So I started making a note of things in the calendar when I tell him something. So when he says I didn't tell him something and I never tell him anything, then I can give him a date and a time of when I actually told him. It may present a view that we don't agree with. And this is especially true with social media, like I was mentioning. We've all seen how the keyboard warriors gear up when someone posts something that they don't agree with. In fact, with the anonymity afforded by the internet, it's more common than not that someone criticizes someone else for their views. So, what happens when we receive criticism? It might surprise you to know that there is an actual psychological process that occurs during the criticism. The first thing that happens is that the criticism is filtered through biases that we already have. For example, you're criticized by your younger supervisor. So you filter that information through your held bias about your age and advanced experience versus her 3 years on the job. Now, once you've received the criticism, rather than focusing on whether it was correct or not, you create an unflattering story about the person doing the criticizing, focusing on their character flaws in defense of yourself. So you may think, she's always been on my back, or he's only been here 3 years. He can't possibly know what he's talking about. Or even, she doesn't like anyone. Basically, you jump to conclusions. Now, regardless of which story you created, the criticism is going to elicit a strong emotional response. It may be hurt, anger, or frustration. Remember, the criticism brings back memories of how you felt from being criticized as a child, and it's going to bring forth all of those same feelings. Now, once you've reached these strong emotions, you're then either going to act or react to those emotions. If the criticism crushes you, you will react by crying, telling the other person that they're wrong and that you're right. If you get angry, you may say something that could get you suspended or even make you lose your job. Your action or reaction may end up causing more problems than what you started with. Now, like I mentioned earlier, the term criticize evolved from dealing with literary works to judging others. In fact, criticism tends to turn more into sniping, the least effective way of providing constructive criticism. And why is this? Because is the criticism done to make the criticizer feel better? Or is it done to put others in their place? So, what if we retool our intent and understanding of criticism to providing useful information that helps others gripe? We want our employees to use criticism to grow, recover, improve, prosper, and excel. Well, first let's talk about efficient criticism versus effective criticism. Efficient criticism is quick at the moment, and you don't get to prepare for it. Because of this, it often comes out as a barked order, and that's not effective. In emergency communications, efficient criticism is sometimes needed, such as in emergency situations or with trainees. Debriefings can help with that. It gives you a chance to go back and change that efficient criticism to effective criticism. Now, I know that we don't always get a chance to be involved in debriefings. So if your agency doesn't include communications in debriefings, then you may want to have your own debriefings in order to be able to handle any criticism that you had to give during that emergency or whatever. Now, effective criticism is not quick, and it's focused on sincerity, empathy, and integrity. We've all heard that you're supposed to sandwich criticism in between two compliments. And sometimes this works and sometimes it doesn't. It may not work if the person that you're criticizing has also been to the school of criticism and knows that you're following a script, because we've all, every supervisor class you attend, any manager class that you attend, they're all going to tell you to make a sandwich out of the criticism. Give a compliment first, then give the criticism, and then give another compliment. But if you're giving criticism to someone who's been to that school or that class, then this may not work. I had that happen to me once when I was talking to someone who was a very good dispatcher, but we'd had an issue. And when I told her she was a very good dispatcher, she basically said, yeah, just tell me what I did wrong. So you may or may not have that issue with anyone that you're talking to, but it's something that you definitely want to be prepared for. Okay. Are you still seeing my screen? Okay, hold on. There we go. Okay. Now, we want to make our criticism effective. And the way to do that is to deliver your criticism through preparation and consideration. Now, to do that, you want to consider your goal and motivation. As a supervisor, we often get angry when someone does something wrong because it may feel to us like they're disrespecting us or they're disrespecting the rules. So our first impulse is to put them in their place. If that's the motivation for the criticism, you want to put it off until those feelings subside. Then you need to identify the real problem. If someone is late to work once, It's a policy violation. You address it and you move on. If they're late again, it's now a pattern of behavior. It's more important than a single occurrence. If it happens again and you're still addressing the policy violation, then you aren't seeing the real problem. Now, it's not about breaking the rules, but it's now about a problem of trust. It's a problem of respect and a loss of confidence. Because if they're coming in late after a couple of times, then they are showing disrespect for you, and for the rules and for their coworkers. And you also now have a loss of confidence. And by this time, your employees are losing confidence in you because you're still addressing it as a policy violation. And it's no longer a policy violation. This is now a behavior problem. You want to focus on the facts. Don't take another person's word for what happened. Investigate it yourself. Others will tend to filter through their biases when reporting a problem to you. And then when you receive that problem, you're going to filter it through your biases. We talked about biases last month. We talked about the halo effect and the horns effect. And if someone's reporting a problem to you about someone for whom you have the halo effect, then you're filtering this complaint or this problem through that. So you want to make sure that you see and you hear the problem yourself. You want to get all of the relevant information and focus on the what and not necessarily the why. Also, consider any part that you may have played in the problem. Are your policies such that there's room for interpretation? Have you waffled on policies? Is your employee unclear on what their duties entail? So these questions and answering these questions makes the situation less about their personality and their character and more about their actions. Then think about the time and place. Criticism must be well thought out, not just done on the spur of the moment. It's also best done in private, unless the recipient has earned a public arena by maybe misstating or misrepresenting you to others, giving a false perception of your style, your demeanor, or your integrity. For instance, you have an employee who confronts you in front of other employees about something you did or you said or you didn't do or you didn't say. In that case, they've earned their public criticism. And that's something that you would need to take care of there in front of others, rather than letting others continue thinking that you did this incorrectly. You know, said something that you didn't say. Otherwise, the criticism should take place in a quiet office where it's not busy and there are no distractions. You also want to consider the psychological and emotional state of the giver and the receiver. So that's you and the person you're going to talk to. If what you are giving criticism about has upset you, take some time, calm down, breathe in the good, breathe out the bad, and think about the situation. Now, that doesn't mean stew over it, but just think about it. And then look at the state of the recipient and think about, is this criticism going to adversely affect them? Will it make them angry? Or will they actually be able to use it to grow and do better in the future? You don't always have a choice whether or not to give criticism. If there's an issue that you're having to take care of, then that's something that you need to do. You don't have a choice. Like I said, if somebody's been late to work 3-4 times, you have to do something about that. You have no choice. So you're going to have to do it. You just need to consider this. And you still have to do the best that you can to make it effective. You want to evaluate the criteria used to validate the criticism. You want to use your policies, your rules, and your procedures. And think about exactly what you're criticizing for. Criticizing one employee for being late while another employee is late numerous times will completely diminish the strength of your message. So you want to strictly go by your policies, your rules, and your procedures. And then you want to visualize the encounter. Ask yourself beforehand, what if the person becomes overly defensive? Have you ever had a session with someone where they became overly defensive? Some people may cry, they may get angry, they may raise their voice. There are times that you may actually feel threatened by that employee. I actually had one employee stand up and lean over my desk while I was talking to her. So, another employee flat said she would not work for me. And these were just employees that I would never have thought would react that way. So you want to be prepared for anything that may happen. If they become overly defensive, if they yell, they become threatening in any way, you want to think about what you're going to do. What if they deny it? If they say, no, I didn't do that. No, that didn't happen. You've got to have all of your facts in line. If there are recordings, if there are video recordings of anything, typed emails, anything like that, any kind of instant messages that were sent on the city computer, anything like that, you want to have available and have it ready. But you might as well go ahead and prepare that they're going to deny it. Generally, they're going to deny it. What if they say your facts are wrong? Do you have your facts right? Do you have everything lined up and in order? What if they become overly emotional? They start crying to the point that you can't even talk to them. That you have to let them go collect themselves. What if they can't collect themselves? Are you going to be able to send them home? And so this is something that you want to be prepared for. If they become overly emotional and you have to send them home, make sure that you have people in place that can take their spot. What if they ask what policy was violated? Do you have the policy number and the written policy in front of you that you can tell them what policy was violated? What if they refuse to talk or seem like they're not listening? How are you going to handle that? Are you going to send them home? Are you going to bring in somebody from higher up in the chain of command? You have to figure out what you're going to do if they refuse to engage with you. What if they storm out in a huff? What does your policy say about that? I did have an employee once that stormed out in a huff, literally got up off of the main dispatch radio, took her headset off and said, "I'm leaving," and walked out the door. Didn't tell anybody anything, just got up, said, "I'm leaving," and walked out the door and left the main dispatch channel unmanned. So what happens in that instance? Do you have a policy that says if they put anyone in danger that they are immediately terminated? Or is the situation such that you're going to give them a chance to come back and talk to you? You need to know what you're going to do in that instance. And what if they become abusive? You really need to know what's going to happen in that instance. And, in today's workplace, I mean, it's gotten worse and worse as we've gone along. And, employees are more stressed. They are more abusive than I've ever seen. They become threatening. So you need to have a plan for what you're going to do. Now, one thing about providing criticism is that I've never done it by myself. I've always had somebody else with me. And like I said, I had the one employee lean over the desk, get mad at me and lean over the desk and yell in my face. My plan was to dive under the desk, but you may need another plan besides that one, because that wouldn't have worked for me. But what if they say you're right? You don't want to diminish their acceptance by repeating what they did wrong. You want to organize your thoughts. Have note cards. The note cards will keep you on track and show that you're prepared. You don't want to get into discussions of taboo subjects like family, religion, politics, or anything else that's not germane to the problem. You want to make sure that you stay on track, and if it takes note cards or a script or anything else, you want to make sure that you stay on track with this problem. And then you want to send a clear message by stating the problem clearly and specifically. Remember that words such as "you do" and "you are" or "you always" or "you never" can be taken as a personal attack. So you want to stick to the problem. And you may say that during this time, the focus should have been on the trainee rather than on social media. Instead of saying, you were on Facebook rather than paying attention to the trainee, word it differently. Because any time you use "you" when giving criticism, it can be taken as a personal attack. So, like I said, try during this time, the focus should have been on the trainee rather than on social media. And then think win-win. The goal is not to have a winner and a loser, but you want to have an understanding about the topic and how things can change for the better. Now, when you have the conversation, you want to follow certain steps during that conversation. You want to consider and reconsider. Check and recheck your facts. Make sure that all of your facts are in line. Make sure that you have your timeline down. So if the issue is that they were late to work 4 times, then you want to make sure that you have exactly the 4 times that they were late. You want date and time. You want to have documentation about their reason that they gave for being late. So you want to have all of those facts ready and written down so that you can have them ready to give to the employee. When they come in, let's say they come into your office where it's quiet, it's not busy. You want to offer a greeting and then get to the point. Don't engage in a lot of small talk because this makes you seem disingenuous. Generally, when you bring somebody into your office, well, first of all, when you tell somebody to come into your office, the first thing that everybody thinks is, I've done something wrong. And in some cases that's true, but you may be calling somebody into your office to tell them what a great job they did. But when you're calling them in to give them criticism about something, a lot of times they're going to come in and they're going to start saying, what did I do wrong? Or I know what I did wrong, or, whatever. Don't engage in that small talk. Just offer your greeting and then get to the point. You want to present the problem or the predicament based on the facts. State the problem as you see it. So, for instance, you've been late to work 4 times in the last month, or maybe not you've been late to work, but yeah, that's basically it. State the facts. You've been late to work 4 times. This is a violation of whatever. The dates are this date, this date, this date, and this date. And because our policy says this is a violation of this policy number, blah, blah, blah. Remember, you want to use you as little as possible. And then you want to offer an interim understanding of the facts. As I see it, or it appears that XYZ has been happening. So in the case of someone being late, it appears that there may be some problems at home that you're having to deal with, things like that. And some employees, actually a lot of employees, may have that Chicken Little attitude, that the sky is falling, and they think that you're completely unhappy with their work as soon as you tell them to come into your office. And you don't want to let them continue to think that. One way that you can avoid that is by telling them, I'm not unhappy with your work. I want to address this one issue. Just don't let them go on thinking that that you're unhappy with everything that they're doing. You want to conclude the criticism with questions, because you want to definitely show them that you're open to other information. So having a time for questions allows them to think that they haven't already been convicted, and it gives you a chance to listen to their side. There may actually be extenuating circumstances. It's happened before where you've looked at the facts and everything's just right, and then when you talk to them, you find out, oh, there were extenuating circumstances. And then you want to lather, rinse, and repeat. Engage in active listening, because there may be more to the situation than you thought, and it may change how you respond. So you're going to listen to them. You're going to give them the issues that you see as you see it. And then you're going to give them a chance to talk. And then after that, you're going to respond. So after they've had a chance to, you've asked them if they have any questions, you've given them a chance to give their side, you've engaged in active listening. So now you need to consider, does the new information change the facts, or do you still have to deal with the policy violation? Is there something you can offer to do to help? Offering to help, or well, number one, just listening to them, and then offering to help will go towards showing a sincere desire for that person to succeed. Not that you just want to jump on them, but that you really want them to succeed, and you want them to take what you've told them and move forward and use that to grow. And then you want to complete the conversation. So you're going to take this opportunity to clarify what you expect the result to be and your planned follow-up approach. So when you have to give criticism, remember to follow the steps that you need for your employees to be able to take that criticism and use it to grow in their careers, their knowledge, and opportunities. Like I said, the criticism should be used to allow others to gripe, to grow, to recover, to shoot, I always have trouble with the I. You know what? Let me tell you. I can't believe this. Trying to use my words and I can't. Prove. Thank you, Leslie. Somebody's listening to me. Improve. Okay. Well, good. So then, what is the P? Let me see if y'all are listening. Come on, y'all. Prosper. Oh, that's impressive. You are listening. And the E? Excellent. I love it when y'all listen. Okay. You want the criticism to be effective, not efficient. So remember, effective criticism is the criticism that you plan for, you use empathy when you're giving this criticism. Efficient criticism is at the moment, quick, during an emergency. If you're working with a trainee and they're not handling the call correctly, you may have to give them some quick criticism. And whenever you have to, remember that you want to always debrief afterwards and tell them why you gave them the criticism. If it's effective criticism, you want to tell them why you had to do it that way and what was going on. Another thing is focus on your goal before giving that criticism. What is your goal in providing this criticism? Is it just because they did something that made you angry? Which a lot of times it will. Or did they do something that with giving them criticism, your goal is to correct that behavior and get them moving in the right direction from then forward. So focus on that goal. If it's something that they did that made you angry, Stop and think about it. Don't provide the criticism when it happens. Stop and think about it. Calm down. Gather your thoughts, and and then give them the criticism. Stick to the facts. Don't let other topics or issues come up. I know that a lot of times when you've got, when you're having to hand out criticism to someone, and a lot of us are this way, our first reaction is to, well, so-and-so has done that, as long as I can remember. Or, well, my other trainer told me that I could do this. Or, pick it. Don't let those issues come up. This is not about what other people are doing or what other people have said. This is about what they're doing, their issue, and what behavioral changes you need from them. Stay open-minded. You may be wrong. Even after all your research and your fact-finding and checking everything, you actually may be wrong. I was wrong once in 1997. So stay open-minded, because that actually, it may actually happen to you once. Have a beginning and an end in mind. The beginning is, this is the issue as I see it. The ending is, this is what we need to do to fix this issue. And it is we, it's not you, it's we. We need to fix this issue, because it's not just their issue, it's your issue too. It could be the whole department's issue if allowed to continue. So have a beginning, this is what we're dealing with, and have an end, this is how we're going to fix it. And then don't forget to follow up. You always want to take the opportunity later to encourage your employee if they've taken your words to heart and they've improved since you spoke with them about the issue. Following up with them and letting them know that they've improved will give them a chance to, quote unquote, redeem themselves in your eyes. And it will give you a chance to bridge any gap or any separation in the relationship that criticism may have caused. And then also, if your criticism failed to motivate them to do better, then you're going to have to follow up on that too and take further action. So you always want to follow up. Criticism does not work unless you follow up. That is actually one of the most important things. Now, before we get to questions, I want to remind you to tune in next month, same bat time. Let me share again. Okay, so tune in next month, Wednesday, May the 5th at noon Central Time for our next webinar, Complacency, the Silent Killer of ECCs. So join us for this discussion and learn why we get complacent, what can happen when we do, and how to conquer complacency. Now, if you have any questions, go ahead and send those in, and I'll answer those. In the meantime, get rid of that. Okay. Remember that if you need a certificate for today's lesson for CEUs, send an email to training@comelectronics.com. I want to thank you for joining us. This presentation has been made possible by Commercial Electronics, provider of public safety solutions, including higher ground NG 911 recording, C.R.I.P.E third-party quality assurance program, and our newest product, Live 911, which allows for one-way streaming of live 911 calls to the officers' computers in their units. If you want to know more about Live 911 or any of our other products, reach out to us at training@commelectronics.com, or you can email me directly at beth@commelectronics.com. And I will leave this up for a few minutes in case anybody has questions. And remember, if you need a certificate, send an email to training@commelectronics.com. I hope everybody has a great day, and thank you for joining us.